Well, with the filler deck installed, all that's left to finish up this fuel tank is to get our sending unit wire hooked up. But with the fact that the truck has been flooded and this wire is just really old in the first place, it's probably a good idea to replace it. We know that there's been water in here, and that can lead to shorts, blown fuses, and it's also a fire hazard. So replacing your wiring on something this old, especially if there's water damage, is one of the best ideas that you can have. Instead of buying a whole bunch of wire, connectors, and other supplies and spending all the time to build this harness out from scratch, we went and found this American Auto Wire Classic Update Series wiring kit at Summit Racing. Now, this is a complete kit that comes with everything you need to rewire your entire truck front to back. It also comes with its own fuse block that's going to allow us to update blade-style fuses rather than the original plastic. And every single wire in this kit is labeled, so even if you're still a beginner and learning, this is going to be the easiest and safest way to make sure you get this done right. Now, the first step to getting this installed is going to be mounting this fuse block exactly how American Auto Wire recommends. Depending on your build, you might have some unnecessary wires in a kit like this, but make sure that you read the instructions and the labels before you start cutting. The wiring is coming along pretty good so far, and I've got the interior mostly buttoned up, so I've moved out here to the engine bay to start getting some of this stuff running. Now, a lot of it can't be terminated until we get things like the engine and the lights actually put back onto the truck, but that's okay, because we can at least get the wires close to where they're going to live once all that's done. Now we're going to need to take care of these screws that we used on the inside to mount the fuse block and a couple of wiring harnesses. And not only is this going to keep you from getting your hands all cut up, but it's also going to make it look and blend in a lot better with this fresh black paint. With all those capped off, we got one more thing we need to do before we can start gluing these wires together, and that is fill in this hole right here. The best way to do that is with the grommet. But with the wires already being run, we can't slide one over, so we're going to have to make some modifications to this to make it fit. We're going to take a pair of cutters, make a nice, clean cut. But this hole itself is a little bit too small for that big old bundle, so we're going to need to trim this rubber off very carefully, work our way around. With that done, we can get this put on and move on to getting the wire hooked up. When it comes to wiring up the ignition system on one of these old Fords, it's about as simple and easy as it gets. Pretty much everything runs along this passenger side inner fender, and I've got a battery sitting in here just for mock-up purposes so that we can measure how long we need to cut our terminals and run down to the silicone switch, which will run as our primary hub for our entire ignition system. Now, this little guy has 4 terminals. The first one is where you're going to tie in to the positive side of your battery. It's got one just like it on the other side for a hot wire to the starter. On the front here, you can see 2 letters, S and I. The S is where you'll tie into the P-hot on your ignition switch. The I is for the positive terminal on your ignition coil. All of these components have to work in harmony in order to get your engine to fire. But once it is running, how does it maintain that electricity? Well, back in the day, these old trucks had what was called a generator. These things were hefty, beefy, and damn, they could put out some current. But they did require one thing, voltage regulator. If Clint wants to cruise down the highway with the headlights on, radio blasting, and the windshield wipers flapping, he'll have this thing to thank. Because basically what it does is it evenly distributes 12 to 14 volts throughout the entire electrical system so that one component doesn't get overloaded or underloaded. There are some companies out there that offer alternators that look just like generators and are internally regulated, So for you guys at home that like that old school look but want a few more modern conveniences, might be something you look into. But no matter what route you decide to take, first things first, you're going to need an engine. Up next, fire on the hole. It's time to see if the spring stick will turn over. Installed, all that's left to finish up this fuel tank is to get our sending unit wire hooked up. But with the fact that the truck has been flooded and this wire is just really old in the first place, it's probably a good idea to replace it. We know that there's been water in here and that can lead to shorts, blown fuses, and it's also a fire hazard. So replacing your wiring on something this old, especially if there's water damage, is one of the best ideas that you can have. Instead of buying a whole bunch of wire, connectors, and other supplies and spending all the time to build this harness out from scratch, we went and found this American Autowire Classic Update Series wiring kit at Summit Racing. Now, this is a complete kit that comes with everything you need to rewire your entire truck front to back. It also comes with its own fuse block that's going to allow us to update to blade-style fuses rather than the original plastic. And every single wire in this kit is labeled, so even if you're still a beginner and learning, this is going to be the easiest and safest way to make sure you get this done. Now, the first step to getting this installed is going to be mounting this fuse block exactly how American Autowire recommends. Just going to tack our sheet metal into place here, go back over it, shape it with our hammer and dog wheel. Alright, we got the half panel tacked into place, ready for final welding. Now, before you guys go to do this, it's good to keep the air blower by your side to help control the heat fluid and don't cause any warpage. Looks like our pants are blending in real nice. Next thing to do is get this whole thing over next door to the prep booth so we start setting it up for some paint. As we mentioned before, Clint wants this truck to look as close to original as possible. However, there are some things that we just have to compromise on. Now, we've already had to do a little bit of rust repair here in the front. We don't want to have to do that again. So I think the best course of action is to strip all this down to bare metal, seal it with some epoxy primer and flat hot rod black. I think that is going to prevent the future corrosion and really make our new bed with the kit really pop. Let's get started. I'm wearing a respirator while I'm shearing down all this old blood on the cage. I keep all those old nasty empty particulates out of my lungs, which I am a fan of because I do enjoy breathing without the aid of a respirator. All those layers of paint shining back through on that bed. Almost looks like a Picasso painting. This black black is pretty forgiving. Doesn't have to be as smooth as average pickup lines. But it does need to be healed. We're going to make sure to buff out any imperfections that you might see upon closer inspection. Well, pretty much got everything ready to rock and roll. Got a few more spots spots to touch it, but the next thing to do is you're going to get this over to the other paper loop, mask it off, and start prepping it for sprite. Up next, it's prime time as we get our truck ready for bed. Want to get more done with one sheet? Grab Bounty. Bounty is making you stronger and more absorbent. So while ordinary brands can't hold up, one sheet of Bounty keeps working even when wet. Will paper towel do all that? Bounty, quick and pick her up. America's #1 trusted paper towel.
This we need to start on something amazing. Or media.
I've always been looking for the person how I look is
I want to get to the juicy stuff.
the truth session.
You can move from the
I don't know how this works long term.
like 1 second away from starting it. The pudding. Everything's perfect.
It's down to you. Can't believe it.
I'm learning. That's crazy. Anything's possible. I don't know how this is going to play out.
Every single conversation. Call again.
Love reaching out, but I want to find my person for life.
If you're ready for that next step in time direction, you know where you're expanding here. Once you make the trust is your book, go get up with your gear, full service business statements. Procedure digital banking to cash management solutions that protect your accounts and optimize cash flow. And business funds customize your exact needs whenever you're ready to go out. So you can help them. You can match up the possibilities with Montecito Bank and Trust. Okay, we got our truck bed all masked off, cleaned it up with spice and grease for an attack lots, all ready for some sprite. Get the stuff laid down, ready for all run flat. Now I know I'm not exactly painting the Sistine Chapel here. A steady hand, smooth motion, get a nice even spread, to lay down your primer, your paint. Stick to the basics, like making sure your gun is clean, handle all the drips accordingly, especially these tight nooks and crannies around the tailgate. As that big and safe sitting, we have made a dramatic improvement on Flint's old truck bed back here. Falls down all the uglies, it's a press repair, and I think this hot rock black is going to give it a nice deep finish. Now some of you may be wondering why we went through all that trouble with Mother Nature's Candy. Well, there is a reason for it. We are replacing this bed fork in its entirety, including the hardware, bracing, and wood itself. And all that fancy new stuff inside a empty old truck bed wouldn't look right. So, to dress this up, we're adding this bedwood kit that we snagged at Southern Racing. It has all the holes pre-drilled along with slotted channels. We also opted for the higher satin finish, and since this is Flint Black truck, we went with black walnut for the logo. But before you guys just go stuffing this into your truck bed, there are a couple there to just keep in mind. First things first, you want to make sure that your bed is square. 90 and 110. Ideally, you want the corners within 1/16 of an inch. As you do it. We also need to find our center point so we can easily space out our wood and strips. So 28 and a half is our center. Sometimes when you put these boards in, you got to fill this lip up just a little bit. Best way to do that, just 4 inch. Just kind of gently pull up on it. Ever so sweet. Alright, we got our bedwood replacement kit kind of rubbed in and it's starting to look really sharp. Next step is go ahead and pull in our center supports and adjust our gap. Air cleaned up and sandblasted are all centers and bolts. So if yours are in good shape, try and reuse them if you can, otherwise you have to build some new ones. While Joel was working the wood for our bed, I was back here mining the metal so that we could freshen up this frame before we get the bed back on. What we're going to do that with is POR-15's rust preventative coating. Now, I've already gone through, cleaned and prepped it with their solutions, so all we got left to do is brush this on, and we're ready to go. Now, you want to be careful not to overdo it with this stuff because a little bit goes a long way. Now, you might be wondering why we're going through all the effort of painting underneath it here when it's probably never going to be seen again, but this POR is not just paint. What it is a rust preventative coating that's not going to chip, crack, or peel at any point, so it's going to keep the moisture off of our frame so that we're not going to have to worry about any rust popping up. That's about the biggest safety concern you can have when driving a truck. The frame might look a little bit rough right now, but thankfully it is all just on the surface. This is going to keep it from getting any deeper. Less is definitely more with this stuff. It's only going to take us about a half a quart to do this entire frame. So if you get a quart or more, you're definitely going to have some left over for other projects down the road. The reason we didn't fully strip this frame is because POR stands for paint over rust. You're not going to have anything to worry about once this stuff cures. Well, with all the frame coating that we can do for right now finished up, it's time to move into this gearing. Now, as you can see, we've already got it mostly gutted with the seat, the gauges, and all the dash components out. Wiring's almost out of here. So all that's really left is these layers of floor mats, and more importantly, this old fuel tank. The fuel tank is one of the most important things to inspect when you buy an old car or truck, because you never know what kind of sediment or rust buildup you have in it. That is the last thing you want running through your fuel system. Now, replacing this tank is a pretty easy choice for us because when we pull the seat out, it hit the tank and put not one, but two holes in it because it is full of rust on the inside. And I think I know why. Because instead of gas, it's full of water, just like the engine and transmission. So we're going to get this out of here and get a new one in. Swapping out our old fuel tank labor-wise is not going to be that big of a deal. In fact, it's a fairly easy and straightforward process.